On this episode of Before Brunch, we're talking about the path to motherhood. We're talking with women who have experienced different journeys to completing their families. Today's guests include education strategist Tiffany Benjamin, marketing VP Jessica Fitzgibbons, and CEO of the KBD Marketing Group, Kelly Davis. Thanks for tuning into Before Brunch TV. Today we're talking all about the journey to become a mother. So last season we really explored parenting, what that's like, and after you have the child. But it's always a journey for some people actually getting to that point. So here today I have Kelly, Jessica, and Tiffany. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
So excited to talk about this. I mean, this is a topic where I feel like more people are open to talking about it now, but it's still kind of, a little taboo. So my first question for you all is growing up, what did motherhood look like to you? Did you see anybody who might have talked about having some complications, or, was that even talked about in your generation?
For me, not so much. I feel like motherhood looked like it was possible for anybody. It was just a matter of when you wanted to be a mom, you go to school, you get married, you have the baby, and that's just what I thought it would be. But we had some people in my family that had some challenges, but it wasn't really talked about, especially not in terms of getting assistance. So.
Yes, I mean, basically the same thing. I don't remember ever having conversations or hearing about people that had any sort of challenges getting pregnant. I remember my mom losing a child and it just sort of being brushed over as a young girl, I don't know that she ever got to deal with it or how she managed herself through that, the way she felt. But yeah, I mean, we really didn't discuss it very much. And later, of course, in life, found out so much more when I was going through stuff. So it's crazy that it looks so different from that perspective as a young girl, even in high school, not really understanding that side of things at all and what it could be like. So yeah, that was kind of my experience and perspective growing up as a young girl.
Yeah. Tiffany, how about you?
I think growing up, I looked at getting pregnant or starting a family. It's easy. I was raised with a lot of single mothers around me, and I was raised in a very rural area. So I remember we had some girls pregnant in middle school and in high school. So the idea of getting pregnant wasn't something that was discussed or that I saw as complicated, but the complexities of pregnancy was something I was exposed to. My mother had preeclampsia. I was born 2 months early in the 80s. I was only about 2 pounds, and my grandmother had hypertension complications. So it was a conversation that I heard from a young age. You can get sick or things can go wrong. So that wasn't something that was foreign to me. Now, all the different ways things can go wrong was in a conversation that I heard a lot about, but definitely that pregnancy isn't necessarily easy peasy. I don't think I had that point of view.
And I think I did have an aunt who had challenges, but because my mom didn't experience that, it seemed kind of far off. So it wasn't something that I thought would be my own experience. Right. I figured I'd be the exception. That was her experience, but it wasn't something that I thought was super common.
Right, and I think, growing up, I kind of the same way. You saw people getting pregnant, so you're like, oh, okay, they having sex.
Right.
Especially if you're young, so like you said, the idea of getting pregnant was easy, but all the challenges afterwards. Because I remember even having some issues during my pregnancy, and I would ask my mom, did you experience any of this? My grandma, no, from what we can remember, everything was fine. But I'm like, was everything fine? Do y'all really remember being pregnant and going through this stuff? And I think that's so important when we talk exploring our family history and how that kind of shows up in our own pregnancy. So I'd like kind of for each of you to share what path you took and kind of the journey that you've given birth now, you're currently, and then Tiffany, you've had a whole nother situation as well. So I'd like to kind of explore what you went through.
Sure. So when my husband and I decided we wanted to have a family, I had miscarried about 10 years prior. And so I never thought pregnancy was going to be a challenge because I had a pregnancy. We weren't trying. And then it was oh, you're pregnant. And then I ended up miscarrying. And so when we were at the point where we were ready to really try, I thought, surely it's just going to be tonight's going to be the night, And when that was not happening, I started seeking my doctor and medical professionals, and they started me on like Clomid, things like that, just to kind of get things going. And that was about a 3-year process.
Wow.
And nothing was happening. And then it was like, okay, conversations about IUI and IVF started circulating, and I'm like, is this really like me? Like that, you know, you hear about it, but am I really going to have to proceed in this direction?
Like,
yeah, you know, and not saying that, you know,
Right.
but that was kind of my thought. And so we did, you know, IUI, and I was grateful that we had the resources to do that from my husband's job. And
So what is IUI?
okay,
just sitting there
I'm
like,
sorry,
oh, no, don't be
intrauterine
sorry.
insemination.
Okay.
So basically it is, they will kind of, you'll take injections to get your egg quality up. You're producing all of these follicles, and then they are going to extract them, and then they will inseminate. I'm sorry, they will not extract, that's IVF. They will allow you to kind of create all of these follicles, and then they will inseminate you. So it's basically like more of the natural process. So they're going in almost and injecting. That didn't work for me because I produced too many. And so they're like, Ms. Webb, you could potentially have like 6 kids, so you should probably not proceed. So it was a failed IUI attempt. And then they said, okay, would you like to do another round? And when we started looking at dollars and cents, you know, my husband was like, we might as well go for the gusto because we're gonna lose all the insurance, you know, trying IUI. So then we moved to IVF, which is just in vitro. And that is the process where they extract them and they inseminate, and then they put them back in you. It's like a transfer. And we did a round of that, and that did not work. And I was devastated because it's the financial piece, it's like emotional. I never thought this was gonna be my path. And so I kind of hadn't given up, but I needed to take a break. I'm like, this is just all consuming. It's all you think about.
It's exhausting on your body.
It's exhausting, and nobody talks about that, like the injections, how you feel, you're bloated, you know, you have to do this at a certain time. And so when we made the decision to try again, you know, it was a faith walk, and I went to a different fertility clinic. I got a really good feel, and here we are with triplets. That was a trip in itself. You know, we implanted 1 embryo, and here we are with 3. So that was kind of our journey.
And Jessica, how about you? What's been your path and your journey?
Yeah, so actually similar to you, Kelly, I had a miscarriage 10 years prior to starting again with my husband. And we, you know, as soon as we got married, I had been on birth control for quite some time. And so I came off that, and when we got married, I was hoping that, you know, it would just happen, you know? So it didn't right away, and he started getting nervous. He really wanted to get pregnant and have a family, and you know, I told him, like, well, we haven't even been trying a year, you know, let's give it a little more time. And we ended up getting pregnant in, you know, in whatever month it was, and then I remembered feeling very pregnant and slowly started feeling less pregnant. It was the weirdest feeling. Ended up having a miscarriage, and that was challenging for both of us. It was my second one at this point, and then he was experiencing it. And you know, I wanted to give it a little bit more time before we started trying again. And when we started trying again, I started doing the ovulation sticks, and you know, that was just. I still don't even know if they were right or not. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if they were really giving me the information I needed or not. And I started getting really frustrated. It had almost been a full year from when we started trying again to when, you know, I finally was like, I'm not going to do them anymore, you know. And I told my husband, I said, look, if I'm not pregnant by this month, like, let's go back into the doctor's office and start down this journey of figuring out what's going on. And I have lupus. So when I had talked to my doctor after the first miscarriage, he did a little research and found that some patients that have autoimmune diseases took baby aspirin, and that really helped to thin the blood and make it a little bit more feasible to have a pregnancy that was viable. So I did start taking that as well, but then I wasn't getting pregnant again either. So, that was a little bit concerning. But anyway, I was talking to my neighbor about it, and she was like, girl, throw those sticks out. She was like, forget about them. She said, just every couple days, y'all have sex and maybe it'll happen. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. This is like the month before we had decided that we were gonna go in, and so that's what we did. And do you know that we got pregnant that very next month? So that was like the exciting part. And of course, I was excited, but I was so scared because I had no idea if this was gonna be a viable pregnancy. So for the first, 10 weeks or however long you have to wait till you go in, till you can hear the heartbeat, it's just the complete, you don't know if it's real, and it was just so nerve-wracking. And I remember finally when we got into the doctor's office and they did the ultrasound, and hearing that heartbeat for the first time was just like this wave of relief and joy, like there was an actual, but even then I was still like, is this really gonna stick, because you just, I don't know, it was just like the 2 times I did it, I never heard it, and then to hear it and think, oh my gosh, is this really gonna happen? And
it's almost like you didn't want to get too excited.
I didn't, yeah, I really didn't, and it was awful thinking that way and feeling that way too, because I also wanted to be excited and celebrate, but yeah, it was definitely a mix of emotions. And I feel more confident now. We're a little bit over halfway. We did the big ultrasound. We got to see all the parts forming and like everything's looking good. So that was another, relief and feeling, blessed in that moment. But yeah, so that was kind of my personal journey of getting to halfway there.
Tiffany, tell us about your story, because you've had kind of a whole different journey. Like you've had a very interesting pregnancy, and then what you and your husband have done since.
Yeah, nothing simple on my side. So cut me off if I go too long. So I always look forward to having kids. Even the being pregnant part, I was always fascinated by that. My husband and I got married in my late 20s. We decided after a couple of years we were ready to start a family. And that wasn't an issue. We pretty much got pregnant immediately. And the pregnancy was rough the entire time, every trimester. And the first trimester, I had some bleeding issues and we were just looking out for things. And I learned that I had placenta previa, which is kind of like when your placenta is blocking the cervix, like where the baby would move, and it was like a complete cover. They were like, as you progress in the pregnancy, your placenta should move out of the way. We'll just keep an eye on it. As I got into the second trimester, the placenta was not moving, and I began having a lot of other issues. I had pregnancy-related depression. So you hear a lot about postpartum depression, but you can also experience depression during your pregnancy. So I started dealing with like pregnancy related to the hormones during my pregnancy. And then I heard you all talking about baby moons earlier. So we were supposed to do my baby moon like right around the middle of the pregnancy. And then I just started having just a lot of pains, a lot of shortness of breath. And, I was seeing actually a midwife and my doctor at the time. I vocalized the issues that I was having. But with a lot of issues in pregnancy, you bring it up and everything is kind of normal because everyone has issues, right? And there's so many, you never know what's going to happen to your body. So I voiced the issues that I was having with shortness of breath. And then right around my 20th week, it was actually the week we were planning to do our baby moon, I collapsed and ended up in the hospital. Were there overnight, couldn't breathe, having a lot of issues. And they recognized that I ended up having a pulmonary embolism. And I had blood clots in both of my lungs. And so went through that ordeal, finally got released from the hospital. I ended up on blood thinners the rest of the pregnancy, and then about 6 months post the pregnancy. But we did have a healthy delivery. The placenta previa did shift enough, and we had a healthy delivery. My son was healthy, and I was, able to recover, and I just had to stay on the blood thinners. But it was just a really rough pregnancy. Like, I had looked forward to pregnancy, and no part of it was okay, between the depression and almost losing my life, and then just your normal pains. Like, I was going to a chiropractor every week, because just issues I was having in my second and third trimester of my pregnancy. So just no part of it was pleasurable, or just not even, I guess, pleasurable isn't the word. Like, I wasn't okay with it. Like, beyond not experiencing pleasure, I was just over it the entire time. So we had my son, and I pretty much decided before I had my son that I was like, I don't want to do this again. You know, I imagined having multiple kids, but this was a lot, and I could have lost my life as well as my son's life. And I have this beautiful family, and I don't want to risk my life just to add additional children. So I had made up in my mind that I didn't want to do it again. Of course, I have a husband, so it needed to be a decision between the two of us. But I did decide to do an IUD post-pregnancy because it's supposed to be one of the most safe methods. And then maybe about 9 months after I had my son, I got pregnant again on the IUD. And I had a miscarriage probably around the 12th week. And so a lot of mixed emotions around that because I didn't want to be pregnant. But then once you get pregnant, you're like, okay, God, like you're doing what you're doing. It's going to be okay. You're going to take care of this. And so I did start to get excited. And then after dealing with the emotions of that, I was like, babe, I really do not want to do this again. And so we made some more permanent decisions regarding not getting pregnant again. And we did decide that although we don't want to physically carry, well, I don't want to physically carry, that didn't mean that we didn't want to add to our family. My son would make an excellent big brother. And so we definitely had conversations since my son was born about adoption. And I've always been open to adoption. I've said since I was a young girl, I was going to have 3 kids and adopt one. My mother talked about adoption when I was little, not for herself, but just in conversation. And then she did actually look into fostering. So the idea of it wasn't too foreign. And then my husband has adoption in his family. So it wasn't that foreign to him. And so this year, my son is now 3. Well, I guess last year, 2020, we decided to actually start our adoption journey. And we decided to do a private adoption. And that's when you go through an agency and, you have to pay the agency fees, or a firm, adoption lawyer, you have to pay those fees. And they can help with matching you, and you have to pay the legal fees. And it's not through the child welfare system. And so we started that process. We were matched in October 2020 with an expectant mom, and had conversations with that expectant mom over the last couple of months. We met each other. We went to an ultrasound, and the baby was due April 3rd, a little boy. Got very excited, and, got the call in February. Well, the baby was due March 3rd, sorry. We got the call in late February that the baby was on the way, and she was at the hospital and in labor. And we were there. We made it to the hospital. I was there for delivery. I cut the umbilical cord. We had the baby. Super excited. The baby was healthy. We were preparing to go home, and the birth mother then changed her mind. So we had a failed adoption. So we are technically still on our adoption journey to expand our family. Yeah, that's been my journey.
That's a lot. I mean, because it's like that child was yours. I mean, you know what I mean? Y'all had said that process, and I know you mentioned, you told me like you had met the mom, y'all had gone to all the appointments, you cut the umbilical cord. That's a big thing, and it kind of leads me into my next question for all of you all. It's like, what are some of the misconceptions about like pregnancy and the process that you each have had to go through and experience? Because I know, like we talked about this earlier, it's like, oh, everything's gonna be beautiful, it's gonna be great, but I'm like, every day of my pregnancy I had to stick myself with a needle because I had a blood clot. So I had blood clots when I was on birth control. Like, hey, that means on your pregnancy you're gonna have to stick yourself with a needle every single day, and the bruising, and it's just, you feel just so like, I can't believe this is my situation. Like, you're grateful to be carrying, but it's like, this is so whack because you see other people just, flaunting this. So like, what are some of the misconceptions?
I completely agree. When I was listening to you speak about just like the fear of, every moment, is it everything okay?
Yeah.
I think that was a misconception I had, that it was going to just be this beautiful journey. I'd be glowing. I'd be on baby moons, and I had a high-risk pregnancy. I had a subchorionic hemorrhage. And so I pretty much like bled a lot through my pregnancy. So every time I thought maybe I was miscarrying. So it kind of would steal your joy because you're fearful of getting too excited because every moment is like, is this happening? Or okay, and you're preparing yourself. And so I think that was maybe my own misconception, just thinking that I was gonna have this kind of seamless, flawless journey, and that just wasn't it.
I would say for me, I think the misconception that like I'm not gonna experience things still as a person, like for example, I keep thinking about how, you know, my body is changing so much and feelings about that I should be excited and I'm pregnant and I have to like tell myself, but I'm still going through all these changes and you know, I don't know, it's just a lot mentally, right? And I think that I thought I wouldn't worry about that, like it wouldn't matter, and it does, you know. I mean, I can't, and I know, again, I feel silly even saying it, but I mean, even to be able to work out the way that I was working out, like that's shifted so much. And it's changed my mental, you know, state. And I don't know, I feel guilty feeling these ways, but I also am like, but I am feeling these ways. And, you know, I'm watching my husband lose weight right now, which is just a whole nother conversation for another day. And I'm proud of him. Like, I'm so excited he's being so healthy, and this has like ignited something in him to want to like take control of his like health and diet, and which is awesome. But I'm like expanding, and so it's just, you know, it's just, I think it was just this misconception of that I was just gonna be excited and everything was gonna be great and I wasn't gonna care about any of that, and I do, you know, I do, I struggle with it some, and I mean, I'm thankful. I always in those moments I'm like, but I am so thankful that he's growing and he's healthy, and I am getting bigger, but then there's this other side of like, I'm thinking, how's this gonna affect my body down?
No, that's really
you know
real.
What I mean?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm just that mental struggle and the contradicting of the way your mind's thinking about, and because you're a person, you know, and so yeah, I think that was I think that has been the biggest thing for me.
I think the biggest misconception is that like adoption is plan B. Like because I feel like the overwhelming conversation on adoption is like we couldn't have kids, right? We lost so many kids, or we couldn't have kids. Sometimes you hear it connected to the pro-life conversation. But I think people don't really think about like adoption as just it's just a choice, like a choice you can make within your family planning, right? You can decide just as quickly as you can decide like you want to carry, or you want to carry a certain way, you want to deliver a certain way. You can also decide, I actually would like to adopt. I actually would like to fill in the gap in this way or spread love this way. And so to me, that's been the biggest thing, because I get and I say that because I get the question a lot when we say that we're adopting. They were like, well, don't you have a biological child? Or like, are you having issues having another one? And so for me, I think that is a big piece. Like, people don't think of adoption as just another birth option or another family planning option. And yeah, it's not simple. Like, you don't get rid of the risk just because you decide to adopt, right? Just like you could miscarry, you can have a failed adoption. And they're not the same, but plans can still be interrupted, whether you are having a physical birth or going through a surrogacy or doing an adoption.
I never even thought about that perspective. Thank you for sharing that. And Kelly, lastly, I want to ask you about just the emotional implications of what you went through. And of course, you're trying to, keep the babies, healthy for a delivery, but your own mental process and state during this time and even after, what was that like during that process? I can only imagine.
So when we first started IVF, it was kind of, only close family members knew. And of course, my husband and I, and we were kind of in our little bubble. When we found out that we were pregnant, we found out early on that it was multiples, because when you're high risk, you're doing IVF, they're constantly checking you. So we found out a few weeks in that it was twins. And then it moved to triplets. And then it moved to quads. Yeah. And so the entire pregnancy was such an emotional roller coaster. You know, we started out with one baby, then we went to the twins, and then they came in and they said, oh no, we see two more. And I mean, I was like, what is happening? And I just remember thinking, please don't find any more babies, because they kept looking.
Now you're thinking of this scorecard.
I was just like, what is happening? Yeah. And I'm just looking at the monitor, I'm looking at my husband's face, I'm trying to read his energy, like, is he like, what is happening, you know? And so I feel like at that moment, that's when we like really needed our tribe to kind of rally behind us. You know, we had made a decision that we weren't gonna share that we were pregnant until we, you know, reached that 3-month period. But all that went out the window when we found out that we were having the quads. And we, you know, went to my family and everyone started praying and we were excited. I was scared. There were just so many emotions. And then I miscarried. And so it was kind of, I feel like my joy was like, stop, go, you know, it was like,
you
take a breath.
One of the 4.
Mm-hmm. Okay. They told me it was 2. So I was really, really sick. I remember I was in the weakest state. And I just remember praying and reading scriptures. We went to the ER and they said, you lost 2. And of course I was devastated, because even though I didn't want quads, you come to the idea that, okay, these are my babies. And you know, my husband's like, we're just still so blessed, we have 2. And so we left thinking we had 2. And my uncle, who was a minister, we, you know, called my family. He was like, I believe the Trinity's still there. And I'm like, huh? He's like, I don't think, you know, you lost all. I don't think you lost 2. And we went back to our specialists and they found the 3rd heartbeat. And they're like, nope, it's hiding, it's 3. So it was kind of like up and down. It was, you know, how many babies am I having? I felt like I couldn't really share, you know, people like, oh, you didn't tell me you were having triplets. I'm like, I didn't know what I was having, you know, I didn't know what to share. And so that was emotionally draining. And even through that, I was listening to her share a story. You find the joy in it, you know, but it does kind of take some things away, because that uncertainty and that fear, you just have to not like live in that space and kind of compartmentalize that fear and say, okay, you know, it's gonna be okay. Just keep going, keep praying, and just believing that, you know, this is gonna happen. But I think, you know, after we reached viability in that 25th week, I started feeling a little, okay, this is happening. You know, this is my trio, and you know, we're on the home stretch. But it was, the entire time was very, very emotional, you know, and it's interesting because as a woman, you fear not being able to get pregnant. Then you fear, you know, once you are pregnant, you know, maintaining the pregnancy. You know, it just keeps going, you know? Exactly. And I felt like that was how I felt. It was one fear after the next, you know. Got through the IVF, get pregnant, now it's, you know, can I even sustain this pregnancy? Am I gonna be able to bring forth life? So, super emotional.
Yeah. Well, thank you, ladies, for sharing your story. And congratulations for you. Like, the 3 running around like crazy, I'm sure.
How old are they?
Organized chaos.
They are almost 2.
Oh, so cool. That's awesome.
And then congratulations to you, Jessica. You're about to have a baby. And then Tiffany, continuing praying for you. I know there's going to be even more joy in the next story of the adoption phase. So kudos to you for even just like not giving up on the process and still finding like some happiness. So appreciate you for sharing. And thanks you all for tuning in. You can find more information about Before Brunch TV on our website and at Before Brunch TV online. We'll see you next time.